10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
You have entered Untold Radio AM. And now broadcasting from a secret location, your hosts, Joel Sturgis and Doug Hychak. Hey guys, good evening. Welcome to Untold Radio AM. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Doug Hychak. How you doing, Doug?
How you doing? Oh, did you know it's Alex's birthday?
What?
Yeah, it's his birthday.
Yeah, where's my present, Joel?
Happy birthday, man.
He's like 50 now.
50?
Yep.
50, you say?
He's about 50 years old.
Wow. He looks great for 50.
He does, doesn't
What's
he?
your secrets?
Vitamins. He takes
Moisturizer.
Lots of it. Gotcha. Yep. It puts the skin, it puts the lotion on its skin, or it gets the hose again.
He keeps putting the lotion in the basket.
In a pit with a little dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be horrible.
So I was, we had Alex over for his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about balloons.
Yeah.
I was thinking
the helium ones, right? So
I was just thinking, I'm not going to blow any damn balloons up for this guy.
You get
he's
the
50.
helium ones. That way you can suck. You need to get the helium ones, Doug. That way you can suck it in and talk really funny.
I was thinking about it, but then I went, are you kidding? It's my 50-year-old kid.
My 50. I don't think he's 50.
Well, okay, whatever. But anyhow, so
maybe
thinking about balloons, but it reminded me of a project that's been just kind of wallowing on the back burner. So here's what I'm dead serious on this. I'm going to try to get this done. So I want to put a weather balloon type. I want it to be the highest documented balloon ever to go out into space, literally get it into space.
Sure.
That
would sound very cool.
Get it into space.
Subspace.
Because there's no atmosphere in space.
Yeah. So hold on a second here. I got to get my notes because I found my old notes.
So question, why?
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 Why did I do anything? Why did I put?
Well, I don't know. I'm just asking why. What
to learn?
Learn what, Doug?
To learn if we can shatter the old record, which would give scientists all over the world a new way to monitor weather. Right?
There you go.
Cheaper, better, to explore the upper atmosphere, which I believe contains a ton of life.
It might.
Small space plankton. Remember?
Yep. I do remember. And I was gonna say, it'd be a lot cheaper than a satellite. They could, launch it.
Okay, but here's I gotta get my notes out because it's been a long time since I've looked at this stuff. But it'll all come back to me. Okay, so first off, the reason I wanted to do it is because I think it was about 15 years ago that we developed a new type of polymer.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, when we did the strength tests, I knew this could be this other balloon material, even though that's not why we invented it. You can take a piece, Joel, as an example, and let's say you can put it start out with 1/8 inch thick.
Okay.
And you can stretch this thing literally blocks.
Wow.
A little piece, say 6 inches long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can just grab it, start walking.
And start walking with it and stretch it that far.
And it won't burst.
Really?
Yeah, it won't break. Okay, but here's the key. Because, weather balloons start out at 6 feet diameter, let's say, on the ground. But by the time they get way up there, let's say about 80,000 feet, they're 27 feet wide. Because
they expand.
Expand, and then they burst, and that's what brings them down.
Yep.
And I thought, if I could develop now listen to this. So not only a balloon that won't burst, but one that would be multi-stage, like a multi-stage rocket, where they just keep getting blown up in sequence because, at some point there's only 5% air.
Yeah.
2%. Then it gets down to 1%. Yeah. And when you get down to 1%, the temperatures can reach 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
3,600.
Yes. I want you to think about
it. It gets warmer and warmer and
because,
warmer
but this is what I'm not really sure about. I think the balloon won't warm up at all because there's no air to transfer the heat. Does that make any sense?
It does. It does make sense.
So how can something be 3,600 degrees and yet, to your skin, it wouldn't even feel warm?
Yeah. Well, because, it probably wouldn't have the properties that get activated upon for heat distribution.
Something like that. Yeah. Similar. Yeah. Kind of what you said. So, but what's cool about this material that we developed, we can get it, do it clear, develop the bladder or the balloon clear. So when it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, I mean, I've done tests on this stuff and I can get it down. Okay. So here's a comparative. Have you ever taken a condom, Joe? It's latex rubber and tried to just push your finger through it to see how strong it is?
To be honest, no. I'm always worried about the other thing happening.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
so,
but you're not me.
No.
So there you go.
No, I'm not.
Alex, have you ever done a condom stretch just to see how far it would?
Well, been too worried it would snap too easy.
Okay.
A million jokes in my 5th grade mind are going through my head right now. I'm trying not to let them go.
But for science.
But for science. This is for science.
For science, I would be willing to do it.
Okay. And the idea is you can get it quite thin, but remember, a condom starts out very thin, right? So it still doesn't have much stretch, but when you can take something that starts out at, picture an 1/8-inch thick condom. Well, don't picture that. Anyhow,
try not to picture that.
Don't picture that. Okay, but if you can take something that thick and get it to where it's almost completely transparent, because it's down to 30 thousandths of an inch thick.
Yeah.
Now you've got some serious strength.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and build a bladder, and I'm hoping that somebody in the audience here, I'll be running some kind of ads on Facebook, looking for people who are experts in gas, experts in space, expert in weather balloons. So I want to put a team together to pull off the world's highest balloon, which stands right now at 153,000 feet.
Yep.
Which is 53 miles up.
Yeah.
In space, true space, in my mind, starts at 77 miles.
Sorry. The chat room is lighting up, and these people, we have some of the coolest audience out there that are the greatest. They really are.
I'm not looking at them right now. I don't want
it. Just caught my eye there.
Okay. Oh, you should.
Okay, all right. I'm turning.
That would be a whole different Monster Quest. You're right.
Okay, but here's the thing, Joe. We'll have a camera on it, right?
Yeah.
A number of cameras, actually. I want to do 360. Sure. I want to do a 360 camera. So I think it'll be the first space balloon with a 360 camera. And so if you go to YouTube and you can see people's attempts, there's a ton of them on there, where people get up to 50,000 feet, 80,000, 100,000, and you can already start seeing the curvature of the earth, So if this works, I mean, it could really be a cool development. It actually could end up, maybe, I always say selling the idea to NASA, but you'd probably end up giving it to them.
More than likely, yeah. You know how the government
in a fantasy world,
right.
Yeah, they call you up and go, "Oh no, we really want to give you $10 million."
Yeah, we'd like to, but we don't have the budget for it. But you're going to donate it.
Yes.
And be a great patriot.
Okay, so I got to get my balloon facts up here. So they start out at 6 feet and they get up to 27 foot by the time they're 100,000 feet up. So what I need to do is to make sure that balloon can go to 100 feet wide.
Mm-hmm.
Make it to 100 feet.
Which
then, no. Then when that one pops, Joel, another one will take over. It'll be inflating.
It will already be. It will have an automatic inflation device on board.
No, it won't even need to.
It won't need to.
Okay, so you can use 2 different types of gas, hydrogen or helium. So the idea is to put less amount of gas in a smaller, something that'll carry the payload up there. So it's going to take a ton of math to figure out this multi-stage balloon. But I know there's experts out there. I know some great mathematicians. And I really do want to launch this summer.
I think it'd be very cool.
And we'll put the Untold logo on it.
We should. We have to do that.
I'll put your face on it.
Oh my God. Put Alex's face on
a line drawing.
No, Joel. It'll
be Joel. No, it'll be Joel, and it'll say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody. It's been great.
Yeah. Do you remember those times where people have like tied balloons to their lawn chairs?
I have. I knew I did that. Yeah.
And I always captivates. It always captivates my imagination. But I'm always thinking,
a guy in Kansas that I interviewed.
If it worked,
that
would be scary. If it worked, sitting in a lawn chair. Don't anybody ever try that.
Yeah, others have tried it. I did talk to one guy that did. It took 60 or 70 of these balloons he had, and he had a pellet gun, and he used the pellet gun to shoot the balloons to help him descend.
Right. Did it work?
Kinda. It kind of worked. It didn't go as smooth as he was envisioning.
Well, he didn't die.
He didn't die. He lived, but he did have some broken bones.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, because he landed a little hard.
Oh, my God. Okay, so, all right. So my goal, from the Earth up 15 kilometers, they call that the troposphere. Then the stratosphere is 15 to 31 miles. Then the mesosphere is 31 miles to 53 miles. Right, and it's already 40 below zero.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At the mesosphere, then the thermosphere, 53 miles to 375 miles long. That's my spot, man. That's where I want to be.
You want to be?
I want to get up there. I want to get up to 77 miles. And by the way, I was involved in the world's first civilian space rocket launch. Kai Michelson.
The first.
And I did the video with Scott Hoffman. Mm-hmm. And the goal that he had tried several times, was to get a civilian rocket to 77 miles up. Now we're talking steel. It's a lot of work. And I had my business card in the nose cone, and it made it into space.
So it's floating around in space right now.
No, it came back down.
Did it come down?
Sure, with a parachute. And this was shot off in the Black Rock Desert.
Sure.
And there's stories I could tell you guys of the actual bench testing of the rocket used. I wouldn't want to tell you those stories.
Oh, jeez.
They're so freaky.
I bet.
When they were bench testing the rocket, the actual rocket. Yeah. Oh, man. It's amazing.
Amazing stuff, man. Amazing stuff.
Congratulations to Kai, because nobody knows that a guy from Minnesota was the first to put a civilian rocket into space.
Very cool. He beat SpaceX.
Yes.
He beat Bezos. He beat everybody. He was the first.
Yeah, he was. And his rocket didn't, come down and land and all that crap. But still, it's an amazing accomplishment.
Where did it end up falling?
Well, it fell right in the Black Rock Desert where they launched
it. Came down where it launched.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, it was very cool. Anyhow, so the thermosphere, 53 miles to 375, temps start reaching 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit or 2,000 centigrade. So that's because the solar rays are so strong, right?
Yep. Well, you're also getting closer to the sun too.
Well, yeah, but you're
starting to lose atmosphere.
Yes, but maybe we wait for a solar eclipse. Maybe there's a lot of things that haven't been tried to do this. Okay. All right. Once again, I said, so that you get way up there and the air is so thin, it's like 1% of the gas molecules. So then there's the exosphere. That's like where there's the atmosphere out there, literally in outer space still. Still there.
You're in the very edge, though. You're starting to get that way out edge where the atmosphere is starting to really wane.
And that goes all the way out to 10,000 kilometers straight up, guys.
10,000?
Yeah, kilometers. 6,200 miles. Yep. And that's about where our satellites are orbiting. That's 6,200 miles up.
It would be great if you could actually make it in a full space.
I think it's possible. I don't know why not. It's just the whole thing is weight, the gas, the amount of gas that we put in, the multi-stage balloon, which I don't think has ever been tried, and then how long will this new material, which we call soft tough, by the way, can last, and how will weather play out? The temperatures, the solar. I can't tell you that, but obviously we'll do private tests before so nobody knows if we fail.
Well, yeah, exactly. You got to do some private tests. I know some land. I have some land that's very secluded.
Yeah,
that we could use.
And I don't know, but I think you got to get permission because I know Kai did. He got permission.
You do because you're going so high in the airspace that you have to get some type of permitting and permission to go up that high.
Yep, which is pretty cool. And we were talking about little organisms living up in space.
Yep, little organisms.
I've seen weird things literally in the atmosphere that I can't explain, and we filmed them.
Yeah,
we're like. Yeah. I don't know. They could have been mechanical, I guess, but they look biological to me.
Well, you're not the only one to say that, though. We did a whole show dedicated to that, and then a lot of people came out of the woodwork to talk about that exact theory.
Yeah,
that they have seen things that look like almost aquatic beings. They're swimming around,
right?
And so, I mean, it really was intriguing.
Right.
It's not just you or him or me. There's a lot of people that have seen these. Like almost like for lack of a better term, aquatic beings living in the atmosphere.
Sky squid.
Yeah.
Jellyfish.
It is strange.
Okay, but if you type in sky beast, I think space beast, or something like that in YouTube, you can see a lot of weird stuff NASA's filmed.
Weird stuff. Yeah,
ton of things they don't release too. NASA,
they look like living creatures.
Yeah,
like jellyfish.
No, all sorts of strange,
just oddities, just real odd.
I mean, NASA's films things that look like snakes, all sorts of weird curly Q things. A lot of weird stuff. It looks alive.
Yeah,
why not? Look, from the ground, 375 miles up. It's the world's biggest ecosystem for Earth, and it's completely unexplored. Really, it is.
Yeah.
Nobody's really done anything to look.
Well, it's two things that we haven't looked at, and that's really, really deep and really, really high.
Yeah, and we do know there's a lot of microscopic life in that area.
Well, sure,
could be a source of nutrition.
It could be amazing discoveries. You just never know.
Yep, there's a lot of algae, like Pseudomonas syringes up there.
Question though for you.
Pardon? What?
Being that you're a filmer, I'm a filmmaker. Let's just say you did capture something earth-shattering.
Yeah.
And I hate being conspiracy guy, but I will be for a second. Will they let you release it?
I don't know. I don't know. Okay, but then I was thinking about microscopic life in the ocean, and I've swam in the ocean many times, especially when you get down south. There were places in like Dominican Republic, I would swim a lot because it was just, I don't know, you could see really well in the water. Visibility was good. So I felt very comfortable swimming in the ocean. But anyhow, then I read, I was like, well, I wonder how many microbes are really in the ocean, because I was working with Dr. Bambenek.
Yep.
On a new scent, which is based, it's a new scent based on phytoplankton. And it's the scent, when you go to the ocean and you smell the ocean.
Yep.
That's good, clean. It's almost a clean smell, but it smells organic.
Mm-hmm.
That is phytoplankton being eaten. It's a gas being released.
Gotcha.
It's basically phytoplankton being eaten gas. And so, he was working on scents. We were out testing actually on my lake. And we had been fishing with live bait like for 2 hours, and we weren't getting anything. We just put a little bit of this new scent, which is based on this ocean smell, and it was just bam, 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 bam. We were
they were just hitting.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, but that's just one of the things that lives in the ocean is phytoplankton and copepods and there's all sorts of things. But did you know, and I think I told Alex that this weekend, of course, I probably ruined your party, Alex, telling you about, there's 100 million viruses, different viruses per teaspoon of ocean water or tablespoon.
Yeah, I believe it.
Freaky.
That's very freaky.
100 million different viruses.
Yep.
And you're in the ocean just drinking it, breathing it
just
in.
living. Just living.
That's pretty amazing, the human body.
Well, it's a whole ecosystem. That's the thing. The ocean is really a living organism.
Yeah, no, it's kind of neat. It says more plankton exists in seawater than any other organism. Microscopic forms include protists and bacteria. Phytoplankton are photosynthetic organisms, including algae, by harvesting the energy of the sun and converting it to their tissues. Phytoplankton form the basis of the food chain, which is where Greg got the idea for the scent, because it basically tells every animal, food chain, it's right here, come and get it. Yep. I think it tells like fish, like there's a lot of minnows being eaten, and minnows are eating phytoplankton. It
stimulates their predatory instincts that there's food around.
Yep. So I just thought, that's really interesting. Oh my God, we only have 7 minutes left.
We do. We do only have 7 minutes left.
Did you hear about the bee swarm that killed 3 Russian soldiers and injured 25?
What? Oh, no, this is the first I'm hearing on this one.
Yeah, it was in Ukraine. So apparently these bees swarmed. I don't know if it's true. You read this stuff, It was published this week. And,
Ukrainian bees fighting on the side of freedom.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was interesting.
It is interesting.
All right, so I wanted to go back to the viruses in the ocean.
Sure. Why don't we talk about
why not? For a minute? Well, why not? All right, marine viruses can both be detrimental and beneficial to the ocean's health. Some viruses attack and kill plankton, eliminating the base of the ocean's food chain in a particular area. At the same time, this dead plankton can become a source of carbon that is not otherwise available, right, to other sea life. Could you imagine how complex the food chain is in the ocean?
Right.
Really down to the complexities that we have no idea. None.
I wonder if the deeper you go, whether those viruses still are there. Or is it only at the surface where there's sunlight?
Yeah, there's probably viruses that are down there from hundreds of millions of years ago.
Probably.
Yeah, that haven't been disturbed. Because you get down deep, like into the Mariana Trench, it's 53,000 feet deep, which is, that's like 10 miles down.
Yeah.
10 miles.
Over 10 miles down. There's got to be sediment down there that has never been bothered.
Oh, there's got to be stuff in there from the beginning of the time. I mean, from the formation of the earth or the seas.
Well, that's that was my other idea. And I have everything actually drawn up. And I actually did team up with a scientist on this. So I plan on putting a permanent camera, had planned on it, down in the trench, and then have it on a profiler that you just fill with air, and we could do it remotely by the internet. Then it would raise and lower this camera.
Yeah.
Right. You'd have to have a buoy that's solar powered above it with, strobe lights and, so boats didn't hit it and whatnot. But I actually have everything drawn up, like the CNC, everything's drawn, ready to go, right down to the pontoon. And then Alan died.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, sad.
It's very sad, but that would be very cool to have down there.
Yep, and he was
things that you'd be seeing down there.
Right, and he was the one that was really interested in this project to team up with me. But wouldn't that be cool just to have a live 24/7 camera down that deep? Where we don't know anything. Nothing.
Oh yeah. You'd have to put some decent lights on it because it's so dark down there.
Oh yeah, of course.
And then you'd be able to see a few things.
And the lights, no doubt, would attract attention.
Yep. Just for things to want to come check it out.
Yeah.
Who knows what you might see down there?
No, and then you could have it. You could have it literally live on YouTube,
mm-hmm.
and people could be watching it 24/7, buffer, record. When all of a sudden some new shark or God knows what,
Yeah.
You're going to see new stuff, I would imagine, almost every day.
I bet you would. I bet you might even see some species that are unknown.
But really, the bottom of the ocean is just like going up. I mean, I'm interested in both. I mean, both of them are another dimension.
Well, going up seems to be a little easier than going down. Because that's the thing. No one's mastered the down yet.
We don't know that.
Not many have mastered the down yet.
No, I think I've mastered the down perfect. Because what I would do.
No, I mean inside the trench, all the way to the bottom.
No. I just take a camera and I fill it with epoxy, so it's solid.
Yeah.
There's no air in it. And at that point, it can't leak and it can't explode.
Mm-hmm.
There's just, you do it in a vacuum and you use clear resins and you pot them. And so you basically have a solid block.
A solid state.
Steel. Yeah. Yep.
So the pressures, because I know the pressures are crazy high when you get deeper you get, per square centimeter even.
Do you guys ever forget to shut your cell phone off? I did.
Well, did you forget?
I owe you dinner, Joe.
Oh, you do. That's a demerit gone.
Mine is off, so that must be Joel.
Nope, was not me. His dog. In fact, he's texting the person back.
No, that was me. Well, I used to blame Joel. My phone would go off.
Oh, always. He'd always blame me.
I would say, Joel, turn your damn phone off.
He'd try to mark the merits off of me. William, you're right. USOs have mastered the down. You're right, because USOs are interesting phenomena on their own.
Yeah. I built the Benthic Explorer. It was the world's first permanent underwater camera system in the bottom of Lake Superior. I already did that once.
Yep.
And that had 360 cameras. It had a automatic fish feeding system. It had SAIS meters on it. And that was quite a cool looking deal.
Yeah, it was. Yes, very cool. Very awesome. Even Lake Superior has a lot of mysteries that haven't been uncovered.
And we filmed a lot of life that had never been seen.
Yeah.
We filmed the mysis shrimp in their wild state.
Mm-hmm.
We filmed all jillions of copepods of every kind of description because we had a microscopic camera on it too. That would actually film microscopically at the bottom of Lake Superior. It was cool.
Very cool. You ever think about doing it again?
Yeah, I'd like to. Yeah. I'd like to. I just, I put poor Greg, me and Greg partnered up on that one. And it started out as just an idea. And then it went into my garage and I built it. And then by the time we were done, right, at the day it was installed, we had helicopters above. We were on the Blue Heron research ship. The Benthic Explorer was hanging from a big crane. The whole ship was full of news reporters. We had food catered, and we had probably 50 divers in the water installing this thing. And I was thinking to myself, God, this is cool. This just started as an idea. And then I remember this, I don't know, it was one of the news guys. I think it was somebody from Carol 11, walks up to me and he go, "Hi, Chick." I go, "What?" He goes, "You're pretty damn brilliant." I go, "Why?" He goes, "Because you realize you got all the news people captive on this boat." I said, "Yeah, because it just hit them. They can't just go back."
Yeah.
They're done. No, not till we're done.
Middle Lake Superior, it's not like they can go back.
Exactly. But anyhow, it was cool though. It was fun to when the Blue Heron finally docked, all these reporters go scrambling to the docks to get in their cars.
Yeah, we're out of here.
Oh, and then here comes Car 11. A helicopter picked the reporter up and zoomed him back to Minneapolis so they could scoop everybody. Because that was a big deal. Hey, that was back when the internet was just kind of new.
Yeah. Yep. Very cool.
They were all really interested in that. Anyhow, what time is? Oops, we're past our break.
We gotta get going.
Yeah, so we'll just go to a quick break, and then we're gonna bring Dan right on.
Oh, cool.
Okay,
Dan, we're back.
All right, we're back. So I'm going to introduce Dan.
Well, I want to just say a few words, and then you can go ahead and do that, Alex.
Go ahead.
But what's cool about Dan is, first off, Dan's a biologist, right? And I met Dan, 22 years ago, somewhere like that. And he was a BFRO investigator. But Dan's really cool and very rare because he's a biologist. And he puts a biology perspective on the Bigfoot mystery. So go ahead, Alex. Introduce him.
Okay, great. So Dan, he received his biology degree from UW Stevens Point, where he ended up being a zookeeper and volunteering for the Milwaukee Public Museum in Haiti and the Dominican Republic. He's done speaking engagements for schools, universities, and organizations all over the USA, Australia, and a bunch of other countries. His work has been published in over 100 publications. He was in the BFR for 4 years, and now he does independent field research. So I'd like to welcome Dan on. How's it going?
Good.
There he is.
Dan.
Long time no see, Dan.
Hey, Joel.
How you doing?
Hanging in there. I'm glad you
good, man. Good.
And Dan, do you remember when we met?
I sure do.
That was
and Matthew is sitting right there, and I'm like, holy cow, 2 guys I've been wanting to meet for a long time.
Oh yeah, I was with Matt Moneymaker.
Yeah.
We were loading the bounder for Mysterious Encounters. Is that correct?
I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we had the big motor home, and it was all done up with all these sponsor decals all over it.
Now at your place, we spent a lot of time and looking at all your fabulous computers and equipment. That was amazing. And I remember we spent a lot of time looking at the Freeman film too.
Yeah. So that was 20 years ago, 22?
Yeah, I'd say.
At least.
2002.
Okay. So now all you got to do, Dan, is just start out by telling us what in the hell you've been doing for the last 22 years with the Bigfoot mystery.
Sure. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Dan.
First of all, when I left the BFRO, I was in a lot of stress. I'd been having too much fun. The interviews were starting to heat up, and I was working with all kinds of people all over the country, and it was shocking and amazing. And I just went from one interview to another. I got all invites all over the country, and eventually I gained 50 pounds. My typing went from 35 words a minute to 105. I've got atrophication in my right hand from being on a typewriter too much. And so I just thought, I got to get out of here. And so basically I backed off. In the meantime, my grandmother had passed away, and I inherited the house, and there were changes with the economics and business and things like that. So it was taking me a while to find new directions and new paths. And long story short, in about 2008, I met a gal down in Georgia, and she had activity on her property. And I thought, I got to get back into this hard. So I did, and I've been at it ever since. And one of the key things that I've been doing is networking with people, as many as I can, witnesses, enthusiasts, researchers, investigators, across the board, using LinkedIn, using Facebook, and other social opportunities. And it's really paying off. I'm making tremendous friends behind the scenes, you might say. And my next trip now is going to be Arizona for wildlife photography work for a week. We're going to concentrate on hummingbirds and other avian type subjects and anything else that sucks there that gets in the way. And then from there, the first week in June, I'll be up working with researchers in Michigan. Then I'll drop down to Ohio, and then it's up in the air because I've got 50 to 100 more requests to show up in different places around the country. Where I've been, the big success for me is Shane Carpenter and Randy Harrington invited me to their research area called Into the 400 down in the Ozarks of Missouri, and we have 4 individuals on that property minimum. The male, last I heard, had a 15-inch print. I bet it's bigger now. We had a female I believe she was 3 years ago, I think 12 inches, and I think she's well over 13 by now. And then there were 2 young ones, and Shane's doing incredible work down there, and as is Randy, and hopefully I'll be back with them before too long. And that's the baseline, and then it goes in many directions from there. How's that?
Really cool. So, what do you think that you bring to the table as somebody who's so interested and, educated on wildlife? Obviously, you specialize in, reptiles. It's a herpetologist? Is that correct?
Right.
But, me and you were discussing reptiles is even a possible food source, and I've thought that for years and years. Mm-hmm. Toads, frogs, snakes. I mean, wouldn't that be kind of an overlooked food source, Dan?
Yeah, I think so, and I'm glad you brought it up, simply because how many people report that type of thing? Not a lot.
No.
But if you go through the BFRO reports, and I just had another friend just send me one today, and I've had some personal communications today that added to the list. I've got over 14 incidences of amphibians or reptiles being utilized by them, where there were either a sighting of the Sasquatch, or there was tracks that indicated what was going on.
And I was gonna say, I suppose they eat frog legs too. Bigfoot.
Sure.
It is a food source that other animals take advantage of. So it would stand to reason they would have that same opportunity.
And if we eat them, they can eat them.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily the other way around, obviously. One of the first reports that I've got when I was in the BFRO with herps was out of Iowa. And the man that I was talking to told me that when he was a little boy, he and his brothers were invited to the rock quarry that his father worked at. And what was going on was there were tracks. And they followed the tracks. And it was apparently a mother with offspring, at least one young one, and I believe two. And they followed the tracks to a pond. In the pond, there were frog legs kicking, where like the frog was grabbed and bitten, eaten, and the legs were just dropped. And I believe these were leopard frogs. So that was an interesting point. They followed the tracks further and noticed that they got up toward a kind of a less than stable ground, that they were quicksand, or just, the earth was like full of sinkholes, etc. And the team of individuals avoided that altogether. But that was, I believe, my first herp association with them. That was back in 2002.
I want to talk about, the great frog migration that happens every fall.
Sure.
I've witnessed it to the point of, oh my God, these frogs crossing the highway they're basically going to a lake, correct, Dan?
Probably. The reason I say that is some species actually work their way underground into, say, open systems where there's water down in the ground.
But don't a lot of frogs live in the forest and then they migrate to the lakes before winter, so they don't, and then bury in the mud? I mean, can you talk about that? What's really going on there? Because what a food source.
Well, that's it exactly. It's constant and breeding concentrations too. For example, many times it's toads or frogs, and they're crossing the roads and they're coming out of, like in the spring, I've got a spot where spring peeper, chorus frogs, and blue-spotted salamanders come flying off the hillside, cross the road, and go to the breeding pond. And this works the other way too, because one, you've got adults doing that for winter if they overwinter under the ice, which many frogs can do, and actually become partially frozen. In addition, don't forget the metamorphosis. Some of these frogs are going to turn into froglets the first year, and notably the peepers and the chorus wood frogs, and then they'll be heading back out to where they spend the winter, depending upon the environment and the topography that is available.
Okay. So you left me more confused than I was.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So, but just either agree or disagree with me. Don't they come out of the lakes in the spring or the ponds? Yeah. And don't they head into the actual forest?
Yes.
A lot of frogs. Okay.
Yes.
So they live in the forest. A lot of people think frogs have to live, in a pond, right? They don't. They all live in the forest.
It's species specific, and some are going to stay pond edge or water, particularly bullfrogs and green frogs.
Okay.
So you get your leopards and your pickerels, and they're going to head out. They're more terrestrial.
Okay, so they're a terrestrial frog, the leopard frogs.
Yeah.
Those are the spotted and green.
Yeah, one of the nicknames is grass frog.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I didn't know that. I've never heard that term, grass frog. But the migrations get so crazy that driving even becomes a hazard around my home. I mean, it's just they're everywhere, and
It's like driving on ice if you happen to
you
run
feel
over.
bad because you don't
Yep.
want to kill any of these things, and yet you have to. We got to live, so you got to go get gas, and I just try to go as slow as I can. I didn't let these things escape.
Mm-hmm.
But it just really hit me, and I thought, man, this would be like nature's nachos. I mean, wouldn't you think they would be, some big animal take advantage of that? And what other animals do take advantage of that, Dan?
Oh, the list is long. Just about all your predatory mammals will take frogs. I saw an interesting incident with a toad along the road. It was obviously roadkill. And I don't know the species that did it, but they skinned the toad and ate it from the inside out. So I got this incredible, I've got the photographs in my archives of just a toad skin. And of course, that's where they have all the skin glands that carry different toxins. And as we know, some toads can be incredibly poisonous.
What about the common, the brown bumpy toad that we all played with when we were kids?
Sure.
Are they toxic?
They are somewhat. Watch a puppy sometime, grab a toad, and they'll often get frothy at the mouth.
Yeah.
And they'll drop it, and they might even act like they're intoxicated a bit.
Mm-hmm. And they also have a very bitter taste to them as well. Some of them do. I mean, there's a lot of defenses. It's amazing the defenses that frogs and toads can employ to save their own lives. They're natural, like the poisons and the taste and things like that. It really is amazing. Now, are we theorizing that Bigfoot is migrating with the amphibians?
Possible to me anyhow. Go ahead, Dan.
Everything's open, right? And then how would you describe Homo sapiens? Are we nocturnal? Are we diurnal? Do we have certain food preferences, certain behaviors? Look at the wide scope. Look at the wide range that we have. You could actually apply that, I think, to perhaps Sasquatches as well. Yeah. Some may have particular food targets that they enjoy, and others are scraping to get by, depending upon the competition for space and protein. But herps are definitely a major protein, especially in these lakes with massive frog populations. Don't forget the fisheries too. So.
Well, here's a dot I want to connect. Bigfoots are generally never found far from water. I mean, if you look at any sighting, I don't care where it is, they're always seems like 500 yards within water.
Yeah, I would say within a mile anyway.
Exactly. And so but that always made me think, why are they there near the water all the time? Is that where one of their major food sources is, or are they just thirsty all the time? Or is it both?
They offer some degree of safety as well.
Well, yes. Okay. So they offer cover with, because there's always trees along a creek.
Yeah, because foliage is usually thickest near a body of water.
Yep. Okay. So you've got the cover. You've got maybe a food source that they maybe need. Maybe they have to eat frogs, for all we know. For all we know, they have to. Dan?
Yeah. The another consideration there is since they track the rivers like a highway or streams and creeks, you're looking at, don't have to worry about tracks. And as far as scat and urine, no problem there.
Yeah.
And water,
pee in the water.
Major available, and food source major available. Yeah. So as far as how far I remember there was a report that sat with me. I started doing Sasquatch literature work in 5th grade. That's when the light turned on for me. And I wanted to know, why are there adults that take these things seriously, and how come I don't know any? And I didn't really meet other people to talk about this with until I was in my early 20s. I tried it with some of the wildlife people I was surrounding myself with, and they wouldn't have it. So I did everything pretty much solo. The report that I found especially interesting was a number of boys that were out with their rifles at night, and I think it was Washington State, certainly Pac Northwest. And there were 3 individuals that were coming off the mountain going down for water. And they were repeating this every night. And that's how these guys intercepted them. And I thought, I wonder how that applies in a lot of other areas. And we certainly have a lot of river bluffs and hillsides and brushy areas that could easily be covered. And often these are stream bottoms or near a lake edge. So I think the water comments really apply heavily.
And water carries scent,
as well.
from upstream.
It does if you're in the water, Joel.
That's what I'm saying. There's certain scents, like fish will give off a scent that animals use to track them. Bears certainly use that same ability. So it offers a for sure feeding area is what it does a lot of times, water.
And regarding water, this book, Rainforest, Raincoast Sasquatch, rather. There we go.
Yep.
Okay.
Robert Ellie.
If you check that out, one of the amazing things are the comments that the commercial fishermen have on them, and seeing tracks as far as 20 miles off the coast, and referring to them as deadheads when they see them in the water, and just the flexibility and capability these fellows or creatures have. Just I think we're still amazed at their physical capabilities, how far they run, how high they jump, their possible speeds, all that good stuff. How much ground they cover.
So what water food or herp would you think they would be most interested in?
Turtles.
Alligators.
I just exchanged with David Shuey in Florida yesterday, and he told me he had one incident where he had tracks and a 5-foot gator carcass. So there's one up that's interesting. Another, let's see, Carter Bouchard had sent me a note that he knew somebody who had found turtle shells collected in Illinois that were in a cave, and there were apparently visuals that went with that. I had done an interview with 6 families in Indiana, and one of the farmers told me that he found a number of different skeleton stacks, and there were box turtle shells with that. Chris Reinhardt just messaged me today over in Connecticut, and he sent me a picture of a box turtle shell that was open with 2 moles in it, ground moles, apparently made available for a gift, possibly. Another shells, let's see, it's BFRO reports from Idaho. That would be, as I go down the list here, 56,270, 2 turtle shells on a log. And a man had seen them, walked by them, kind of stood up, and as he stood up, he got 5 different vocalizations surrounding him in the cover that were Sasquatch-like. And his wife had seen tracks in the area before. So there's a number of different reports associated with these snakes as well.
Yeah, and I've heard that too, and it just never really hit me. But I was just talking to a guy last summer that found a number of turtle shells. And he's got a bunch of activity, a number of creeks that go through his property, and found a bunch of turtle shells that look like they were just left there, almost like gifts for him, to find, because they were found right on the trail.
And that may well be the case. The main predators for the turtles and the frogs include a lot of the fur bearers like raccoons and otter, badger, skunk, possums, etc. And so in a big concentration of them, which also might even represent a food source for our big guys, would be when the turtle season, and you got all the egg laying often in concentrated areas. And of course, those eggs represent a good protein source. And I was just checking in to see how the wildlife management areas were doing with alligators. And of course, most of us think of Florida. but can you guess what state carries more alligators?
No. Which one?
Louisiana.
And I was going to say, it's got to be one of the Gulf Coast states.
Yep.
And Louisiana, the bayou has tons of alligators.
Estimated at about 2 million.
It's
and about
amazing.
1.5 to 2 million in Florida.
That's a lot of gators.
That is a lot of gators.
Now, as you go farther north up the range, their numbers become less. Texas has got up to 500,000 gator. And once you go to Arkansas, it's like 3,000.
Do you think it's the amazing management that they're doing now with the, they are hunting them, but in a very controlled way?
Right.
Is that because they basically have gotten the poaching under control?
Right.
And
there's gator farming too.
Yeah.
Say that again, Deanna.
There's gator farming.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
A lot of fisheries only for gators. Yeah, a lot of those has popped up down there. Do you think the gators, they must be on the list of things that Bigfoot will go after?
Absolutely.
I suppose within reason, because there's also risk and reward you have to think about. If you're an animal, you want to kill it and eat it with the least amount of danger to yourself. So I'd imagine with the right opportunity, with the teeth not being on the end that's attacking, it will go after one.
Right. Well, if I can handle a 5-footer fairly easily, I'm sure
an
8-foot, 800-pound male would have little trouble.
not a big problem taking care of a gator.
Right.
And then David Ellis, of course, mentioned that mussels, oysters, clams, and so on have been noted in many sightings of these things on the beaches, near the coastlines, especially out west. Feeding on these things. Do you have any cool stories about that? You had mentioned the deadheads that Robert Alley had coined that phrase.
Yeah, that's from the commercial fishermen. They gave that to him, I'm sure. Okay. Right in the 400 in the Ozarks, Shane has numerous footprints from one of our juveniles that had walked around the edge of the lake and going for shellfish. I noticed a report out of Kansas where a gal had gone over a bridge and saw an apparent female sitting in the creek edge, pounding on apparently shellfish and things like that. So I think that there's an incredible world awaiting us as we continue to make these discoveries, and network reports and reports keep coming in, and more and more people get in the field to document and record some of the food items that we're seeing being taken.
And then, we get into stories of snakes being tied in knots and being left as gifts. I've heard that so many times.
Really?
And, numerous reports. There's numbers of them even on Sasquatch Chronicle reports.
Oh, sure.
And, where sometimes the heads are gone, the heads are missing, but they're tied in a knot. I mean, you have to have hands to tie 2 snakes in a knot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a little bit of strength involved in that.
Of course, people will say, well, they'll tie themselves in knots. And I'm sure that's possible. But to find them on your
often.
No. And to find them on your doorstep, with regularity is a little bit odd. A little odd.
There is a good report out of Tennessee where a gal was heading home and all of a sudden she's looking up the road, a distance, and there's a reddish brown individual standing in the road. It just pounced on a snake that she said was quite long, and it jumped on the snake, grabbed the snake behind the head, stood up and walked into the forest with it. So I'm sure that if we're eating them, they're eating them. And that brings up the question of how about venomous snakes and snake bite? And I did a little review of some of the statistics coming off the United States. And it's real interesting because really the bulk of the snakes that are causing problems are diamondbacks. 30% of all eastern diamondbacks are fatal, the bites on people. And fortunately, there's not a lot of them, but unfortunately, there are some. Western diamondbacks take out more people than, say, any other species, primarily because of their delivery system size and distribution.
Yeah.
So widely spread. The other snakes, virtually nothing. We've got almost nobody killed by copperheads or water moccasins. Part of this is our medical capabilities. And part of it is a high percentage of these bites are dry. So that means any type of snake bite remedy you want works.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Do you think what's your opinion on this python epidemic of the invaders in Florida? It's pythons and what else? Boa constrictors and
mainly Burmese pythons. African rocks and retics have been found, but I don't think they're verified to reproduce. Probably boas. Certainly iguanas and 25 or 30 other species of exotic lizards. So, I mean, it's protein in all kinds of different forms. There's giant tegu lizards there that'll make 5 feet from Argentina. There are Nile monitor lizards.
In Florida, monitors?
Yeah, a lot of crazy exotics that have been released, and because of the weather, they're capable.
Yeah. But these would all be really good food sources. I know iguanas are very edible.
Oh,
for
yeah.
a Bigfoot or skunk ape.
Chicken of the trees, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, don't you think that there's so many food sources really in the U.S. There's far more than there was 200 years ago. I mean, you kind of agree with that?
Oh,
or would you argue with me?
One of the things we have in southwestern Wisconsin here is white-tailed deer. My grandfather lived to be 94. He told me when he was like 8th grade, no deer, never deer. We were finding elk antlers in the local stream bottoms back in the 70s. This place used to be all elk. We were hungry. We killed and ate them all. We killed and ate all the turkey. We took out the caribou on the north side. The bison's gone. So, I mean, we have literally wiped all those things out. And a big hi to Jay Vernon. We had a great get-together in Milwaukee. And interestingly enough, when we fly into Arizona, we are going to be flying right into Phoenix Mesa, which is where he has moved to. So I can't thank you enough, Doug, for the interview with Jay.
Oh yeah, Jay's awesome. So you got together?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We hung out for a number of hours and Facebook friended, and
very cool.
I'll be working on the property in the future to see what we might come up with in correspondence with Jay and his brother.
Dan, can you think of any lizards that Bigfoot would steer away from?
To be honest, I can't, because these guys are such incredible rock throwers and snappers that I don't think anything is going to be Komodo dragons, sure, because they have a nasty bite with infectious bacteria that almost renders a poisonous effect or venomous effect. Pardon me. Big difference between the two. But they're in Komodo and surrounding islands like Flores and stuff. So.
Sure. So they're kind of like the king of the forest, really.
Yeah. King of the lizards. 365 pounds and 10 feet.
Jeez.
Pounds, I think. So
no thanks. I'll stay away from those things.
Yeah, but the crocs would be crocodiles and alligators would be obviously formidable when they get into that.
The saltwater crocs, I would imagine.
What's the crocodile population doing in Florida nowadays? Is it declining?
1 to 2,000, I believe, but that ought to be Googled to be verified. They're they're stable in the sense that those numbers are holding, but the breeding nests are minimal.
Oh,
so, and they're localized. That's about as far north of their entire range. I was fortunate enough to see them on the Sarapiquí River between Nicaragua and Costa Rica back in 2004. And these guys were hanging. I mean, we're getting 8-footers hanging out 7-8 feet up in the tree basking. And apparently I irritated my guide because he was taking the boat a little too close to him sometimes. So.
Have you ever been down to the Crystal River, the Hermosa River in Florida? It's just incredible, those rivers.
Is this near Manatee areas?
Yeah, right. Where that's crystal clear limestone.
I've seen the manatees there, and I have been there, but unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of field time. I think we had a bunch of telephoto lenses, and we were going crazy in every which direction, trying to nail everything that's up there.
I got to take the Crystal River damn near all the way to the ocean from. I just kept knocking on doors, asking people if I could rent their boat. Finally found a guy that rented me a small aluminum boat. Because everybody was no. And I'm like, there's got to be somebody willing to, give me some cash. But it was the most incredible thing I've ever done was to go down that boat, take 7-mile trip down this crystal clear. You can see to the bottom, 30 feet to the bottom, and just see everything, just amazing. I guess they used to film all the Tarzan movies on that river.
I'd heard that as well.
Yeah, really cool.
Those glass bottom boats we did a little bit of that, and that was pretty interesting.
That is very cool. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
that'd be a lot of fun. It kind of begs the question of the Yowie or Bigfoot in Australia. That's a whole different ecosystem there with critters that are much more aggressive than what we have. Any evidence that they're faring just as well in Australia as they are here?
I need to spend more time with that, but I will say that I've been able to talk to some individuals that have privately shared prints. And hey, Abe, I remember that. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to meeting you and seeing you again as soon as we can. Anyway, back to Australia. I think that there's just vast amount of territory there. A lot of people know a lot more than what they're saying, and there are some interesting footprints and other evidence of things that are going on. And one of the things that boggles your mind is how can we have all these reports, all of the secondary evidence, and be where we are with all the technology we have?
Yeah.
That just kind of like, that's enough for a lot of people to just wipe the whole idea out. But when you get in there and you see the prints and you see the scat and you hear the vocalizations and you see the signature carcasses that have been taken, the way they twist deer legs, etc. The deeper you go into this mystery, the cooler it gets, the more information you find, and who's going to believe you. And most people don't have the type of telephoto lenses necessary to get that dot shot across the lake.
Yeah.
Or peeking in the dark.
Sure.
And then many are not interested in even sharing that type of thing simply because they're concerned about the welfare.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, that and also how intelligent these creatures are too is just amazing.
I had another report that I wanted to share. It was in one of the books, and I believe it was John Green's Apes Among Us. And it was basically a young lady was sitting with her boyfriend was hunting rattlesnakes in California. And it was getting dark. And he's going down the road. Apparently there's another rattler, and he's heading for it. And her description was, I'm sitting in the car, and I'm looking at him going, and he's got his spelunker light on. And up ahead, there is this really dark mass. And he's got his head down, of course. He's looking for rattlers, and off he goes. And all of a sudden, this mass envelopes him. And pow, he's thrown 8 or 10 feet.
Jeez.
So there's an incident of a herpetologist getting involved. Another fellow was in Missouri, and he was gigging or whatever, got messing around with some panfish, and a water moccasin happened to come by, and he happened to snag it. He flipped it out of the water, and he got it wrapped around a tree somehow, or I don't know if he was whipping it or flipping it. And yes, I do, Donald. Dan A. Nedrolo, or my crypto one is Dana Nedrolo. Pardon me. Anyway, he's got this cottonmouth, and he's either killed it or wrapped it around a tree or whatever. Apparently, a big male was standing very close behind him, and it just sounded off. And he left. He didn't remember how much gear he left behind, but he just left the area completely. And to me, it sounded like an intimidation vocal to just, I want the lunch. Get out of here.
Yeah, I want that.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think a lot of this has to do with just scare them, get the food.
Yeah. Yep.
So what's your opinion on stick structures? Because here in the Midwest, we seem to have more of them, from a standpoint of like almost hunting blinds. And have you done much or found many of those, Dan?
I am probably the least capable person you're going to meet that deals with those, but I've got friends in every direction that are coming up with interesting things. And there has been footprints associated with some of them. I know that of 2 incidences that come to mind where the Sasquatch was seen and the stick structures were associated with it. One in Wisconsin. by my friend Donna, and she has actually that's another one I need to follow up on. And then we're looking at a situation that I was told about by Shane. You'll have to talk to Shane and Randy at some point because they have incredible information. But the the landowner of the property, had structures built on near his home. And long story short, it's amazing. These things get put together. These things get taken down. I think that a lot of people get real excited when, well, was it all tore off? Well, what's stopping them from grabbing lumber that was neatly cut? I don't know that they do, or if they do that. So I'm just starting to look at some of these things curiously. And I'm not going to draw any conclusions at this point yet, but other people are. And when you follow this up and you start looking at patterns, it does get interesting.
Yeah, the only patterns that I can consistently find is they're very, very much within 500 yards of water.
Hills, trees,
generally,
water.
Generally by other, sometimes people trails or deer trails. And generally, even more so, a pattern of finding them in areas where railroad tracks, power lines, and creeks all kind of converge. And then you need to just search that area where all these elements converge. I guarantee, because we've been 100% in finding these really weird, complex structures. And sometimes they're in standing water, even of 4-inch deep water. But they're so complex. I just can't imagine that kids or adults would be building them.
Well, we're on the same page with that.
And why? I mean, I don't mean to cut you up, but why? Why build it in hopes that someone's going to find it? I mean, so somebody just building it to build it. It's a pretty remote idea.
Yeah.
Well,
most of them seem like they just break up your outline, because we found complex ones that you can still see light through, but they're going to break up your outline. We find those near deer trails very often. There'll be a deer trail right next door to it.
Well, yeah. Can you think of a better food source than a white-tailed deer? They can get their hands on one. I mean, that's a great source of food right there.
It's a lot of meat, but they don't seem to eat the bony parts. They do seem to be going after the soft, the heart, the liver,
backstrap.
That's about it. And they leave it.
I used to wonder about that a lot. And one of the things that makes sense is a carcass is going to draw a lot of fly larvae. And that's protein as well.
Say that one more time, Dan.
I'm just saying that carcasses that are just laying out seem to draw a lot of fly larvae or insect larvae.
Okay.
So there's tremendous protein there.
Gotcha.
These carcasses. And it might be that's another way that they, vary their diet.
Is it possible that these things would be smart enough to get a deer, but don't kill it, just break its legs and leave it alive, and then you can harvest it, come back maybe a week later, I guess. I mean, I don't know. How long would a deer survive if it couldn't eat or drink?
Right.
3 days.
There are reports of that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, I've actually talked to park rangers that'll call me up and go, gee, over the winter we found a big stack of deers with their legs are all broken.
Wow. That's interesting.
And it just kind of, when you start hearing that more than once, you start thinking, I wonder if they're just immobilizing the deer.
Very well could be.
Nature's refrigerator.
Have they found people like that? Have they found victims like that in the woods, or just deer?
Oh, people, you mean?
Yeah.
There's tales of it, like an LBL.
Are there really?
Yeah, where they found that guy up in a tree or something. They're attributed to Bigfoot. I'd have to brush off maybe one of our listeners remembers the tale.
Yeah, if you look at the 411 accounts,
evidently there's been a few.
There's some suggestive ones, yes. Incidentally, speaking of
411.
What's that?
Missing 411.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yep, David Pleiades. Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
another captive situation I have to mention. I was talking with John Redchun, and how he pronounces that I'll have to work on. But thanks again, John. He gave me permission to talk about something he found. And it may or may not be Sasquatch associated, but it very well could be. There seems to be an area where he had found a lot of sticks pushed in the ground. And in one case, so close together, it almost looked as though it was a fence. After further review, he found a box turtle in it. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is interesting.
So basically a fence, a little cage.
Yeah. Basically, he took the sticks and punched them into the ground so close together that the turtle couldn't get out. So it was a holding area.
Yeah.
Stan Courtney, and if anybody isn't familiar with Stan Courtney, please get familiar with him because he has tremendous vocals that he's been recording over the years with some awesome visuals that he's had as well down in Illinois. But I'm going to elaborate on one of those especially because that blows a lot of people's minds. But anyway, the turtle situation and the snake situation and the croc situation, I think, are all really good resources for meat. And remember, too, when it gets cold, these creatures are immobile for the most part. So real easy to manipulate.
Yeah, because they're going in a hypernatic state.
Right.
So where do the turtles go in the winter in the Midwest?
Where the what?
Turtles? The turtles. Where do they head off to?
The bulk of them underwater. We've got ornate box turtles here in Wisconsin, but our blandings and our wood, and our painteds, our map turtles, everybody's underwater for the most part. Now, what's also interesting, though, is that we'll see associations with snappers and probably some painteds and map turtles in some of the beaver lodges.
Really?
And I don't know with the work you did if you came up with any turtles that way, but they're often even nesting on them.
Yeah, I'm not sure I don't think we saw turtles. We did see some really weird pretty big white bugs, which we filmed. We don't know what they were. They were completely identified.
Wow.
That were living. They looked like they were blind. Blind white bugs that he had evolved to live in beaver lodges.
That's bizarre, huh?
Yeah, really interesting stuff.
Huh. But it's amazing because a lot of these reptiles can actually live under the ice in cold water all winter long. Frogs are doing this. Mud puppies are doing this, of course, because they're capable with the gills, but other animals as well, including water snakes, our Massasauga rattlesnakes and fox snakes and garter snakes underwater all winter. And so the capabilities that they have to acquire that oxygen, their oxygen level needs just dropped when that metabolic rate drops so low in cold weather.
So what about salamanders in the Midwest? You know, the black ones with the yellow spots, what are they called?
Tigers. And bistamite,
We used to catch those and that was our prized possession when we were kids, is to go out. And we would always release them. We'd only keep them for a day. And then just to find those salamanders, but that's a forest animal, correct?
Yes. And again, they're typically in the grasslands and the plains and the marshes and the prairies.
Yeah.
But they will also go into woodland edges, especially open areas. And they're underground. They're called mole salamanders, so they're basically underground. And as you know, there's a lot of rock flipping in the Sasquatch world.
Well, I was going to say, could you imagine how many that Sasquatch would have to eat being 1,200 pounds to sustain that mass? It'd be hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds. And how many pounds of meat?
Well, that's where we used to find them. We used to dig around.
More like the way we process grapes, Joel.
Yeah, right? Just imagine the sheer volume.
We used to dig those salamanders up on the windowsills.
Oh, yeah.
Constant. We'd wait a few days and start digging around the edge, and sure enough, we'd feel one in there. And just
that's how we survey them with pitfall traps.
Yeah.
Fences.
Yeah. Well, what a icky life. Just live underground.
Well,
I mean, buried. They're not in a hole. They're just underground.
Yeah.
So as a biologist, Dan, I mean, it kind of begs that question. I was just thinking about that. How many pounds of meat would an animal like that need to consume on a daily?
Let's convert it over to a black bear and see what black bear needs. So that's a verified species that we can track to see what the actual calorie needs are. I've seen all kinds of references to what they need, but then let's look at people too. I mean, I'm going to be 65 years old, which is hard to believe, and my calorie needs now are certainly not what they were when I was on a hay wagon or under cattle or climbing 10 river bluffs a day back in my heyday, when I was in my 20s. So what are those calorie needs? Also, what's the weight fluctuation? Can we build up to a certain weight, and how much can we drop over winter when we're inactive? And we're minimizing our tracks in the snow.
Yeah. What's really interesting about our natural world is how in the spring, pretty much all the vegetation's full of protein.
Yeah.
And then eventually the berries come. We have the fruits. Then you have the ant pupae and all the different, pupae that are available. But then the vegetation turns to cellulose by August or September, Dan? I mean, it's just worthless. I mean, I
was going to say probably by fall they're converting to almost purely a meat diet at that point. Then,
but you're also looking at roots, and there's been reports of them on working twigs and seeds and things of that nature.
Right.
So exactly how much are they feeding on, and exactly what they're processing, I guess remains to be verified. But also, are they taking items and putting them somewhere for use in cold regions? And that continues to come up from time to time. And different people have that information. Some will share, or we'll see more of that, I think, as more information shared. So.
Yeah, and I would guess, wouldn't you think I would be too wrong to say 10,000 plus calories for a grown male Bigfoot?
Oh, I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
And look at the power and the speed and the distance that they're going. I mean, a 5 mile trek for them, I don't think that's that much energy expended. So if they want to go a long distance from one county to another, there's going to be feeding days for sure.
Yeah. If you take it. Oh, go ahead, sir.
How many do you think there are? Have you ever given that any thought, Dan? Like how many could be out there supported living?
I certainly don't know, but there's more reports of offspring every year. There's more tracks that are really small. And so it seems to me like with our wildlife management and our fisheries and our deer abundance and setting land aside, and plus the fact we have our agricultural situations where a lot of times people are not being paid to farm, you're being paid to set your land aside.
Yeah.
And so I've got a lot of old timers telling me it is as wild now as it was way back when we were cutting everything and trimming everything. So as far as numbers, oh my goodness gracious, if you've got clans of 3, 4, and 5 here and there, how many of those per county? Is there one in every county? Multiply that out. Wisconsin's got 72 counties. Certainly there isn't, you wouldn't think there'd be a clan in every county. Yeah. What percentage of counties have those clans? Figure that out, and then I'd go to the next state and you add it all up, and it's certainly in the thousands. But where are they, and where's the body on the slab, and where's the, for most people, it's like, is there a verified body yet? No.
Yeah.
Okay, that explains everything. I got other things to do other than think about possibility of Sasquatch as being real. So for these folks that are convinced that's impossible, and then they see one, you can just imagine the psychological situation.
I'm sure you've seen Dr. Meldrum speak, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he really breaks that down. What he theorizes would be around, and it's not as many as you would think.
Right. Well, that's it. You can have one individual can be responsible for how many reports. Especially if they're really mobile.
Yeah, it's not like he has a name tag on Bigfoot, so it wasn't Dan the Bigfoot, that kind of thing.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. One animal could be reported so many times. It's kind of nuts if you really think about, one animal that's being busted over and over, as it migrates from one area to another, and even the reports that you get, Dan, in Wisconsin could be the same individuals that come to Minnesota.
Well, sure. Absolutely. Or Iowa.
Yeah.
Or back and forth to Illinois.
So do you think they migrate? Maybe?
Many people are convinced of that. I'm not convinced of anything at this point because I don't have enough information, but other people do. I will say that it's entirely possible, and I think John Green made a reference to the same footprint being observed 100 miles apart in California, and
Same
I'm sure that other people have similar situations. So I'll give you an example. A buddy of mine, Alan Blake Sheldon, he's the fellow that I've been spending a lot of my time photographing nature with, and we did a lot of photography sales together and working with different companies and magazines, etc. He was in central Minnesota one day doing a nature photography gig with a photo club. And as he was setting up, an older fella came up to him and said, "Hey, are you Mr. Sheldon?" And Al goes, "Yeah." And he says, "Real curious, do you live over by the Mississippi River?" And Al goes, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you ever get into areas where there aren't a lot of people around?" And Al goes out with me on rattlesnakes a lot. And yeah. And the next question was, you ever see like what appears to be like a giant bald eagle nest laying on the ground on these hills? Al looks at me and goes, "Pardon me, but you're not talking about a Sasquatch nest bed, are you?" And the guy looks at him and he gets all bright-eyed and goes, "Yes, how'd you know?" And well, that's a long story. But anyway, they got to talking about the subject, and the fellow said, well, his uncle had been woken up in the forest one day by a Sasquatch throwing twigs and rocks at him. And that man's wife, his aunt, had nearly hit a 6-footer. And then he had to go because I was working on a project, and he realized he was kind of interrupted him. And he said, "Oh, by the way, they don't come through here till the corn's high." So isn't that interesting? And
that is interesting. I mean,
a number of different people.
They either could be migrating, or they could be a lot like mountain lions, cougars, and they could have a 150-mile range for all we know.
Let's flip over to gorillas. And one of the things we know about gorillas are that they know the plants that they need, being primarily vegetarian. They know where the plants are, and they know when the plants come into bloom. So they're basically following food availability.
Yeah, and following the food.
Why in the world Sasquatches wouldn't do that?
The smart ones would.
And Randy just sent me a message, and I didn't see what it was because it blasted so fast. I'm gonna. Could any of you guys read that off? Randy Harrington just sent me a note.
Randy?
Yep, I see it there.
There we go.
There it is. There it
is.
Mention
the pawpaw seed and poop and anecdotal information storage. Okay. Well, you would be able to describe that much better than me, Randy, but we've got a situation where with the group of our 4, they've been finding scat with pawpaw seeds at a time where the pawpaw seeds were not available. So it is though it appears we've got individuals that are taking some of these plants, putting them in a location where they're able to access them out of season. Now, how much of that's going on? With ice and snow.
Sure, a makeshift pantry.
You can store meat in cold weather. You can store all kinds. There's been numerous reports of, say, somebody saw one coming with garden products, and the closest garden they knew of was like 5 miles away. How much drying and storing they're using. And I've got an incident that I can't verify that it's a Sasquatch, but I've got a private property I've been monitoring now for 11 years. And one of the interesting things that I've been given on the trading block is a 2-foot piece of plastic fuse and hose, which is yellow, And the landowner looked at that and said, "Where'd that come from? That's never been here before." That was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was I got a sprig of burdock, which is a medicinal plant with the roots, and that's actually a cancer inhibitor. And the sprig of the plant itself, it actually makes for good bandage or Band-Aid. It has properties, cleansing properties. And it's interesting because in 2018, I suffered a bad burn and had to have skin grafts in my left leg. And numerous people have wondered if there was a correlation there. So, but the deeper we get into this, the more interesting it gets and the more things we've got to verify. So
one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, are there any plants that you know of, let's say even in the Pacific Northwest, as far west as that would be really good at curing like Giardia or any other gut parasites? Because, every animal, like cougars, bears, they have their own parasites that are very unique. So if you do scat analysis, you can tell what animal it is by, of course, what's in the scat, but also what parasites. Well, a biologist, Dr. Briggs Hall, found a scat he said it was massive, size of a coffee can. He said it was like 4 feet long. And he said there's no animal in North America that can produce a scat that big. So we had it analyzed. And I have the report here. No parasites were found in the scat. So what plant could it be that they would be eating to keep their gut free of these, big, nasty parasites?
It's time to have a roundtable talk with internal parasite specialists and specialists, because obviously there's some medicinal references to these fellas. And we know that numerous animals eat different plants for different the capabilities that they offer. And I can't imagine these guys are any exception, especially if they've got far more advanced characteristics than we probably typically attribute to them. For example, if you look at Coco the gorilla, supposedly could sign over 1,000 different words. Yep. And that was controversial. Some people dig that and accept that, and others do not, for whatever reason. If she had the anatomical capability, she would have been able to say those words. And apparently, these guys have that potential capability, verified by mimics and recordings and things like that. And when I say verified, I mean that from the standpoint of the people that are working with them. To outsiders, that's probably not a verification, because it could be this, it could be that, it could be whatever. How much do these things know? How capable are they with communications? I mean, the range of claims are all over the board, but if they're smarter than gorillas and chimpanzees, we may have some interesting things to learn in the near future as more and more data comes in and recordings and all that. So it's just absolutely fascinating.
Well, what's interesting is, to have knowledge of a medicinal plant and be able to find that plant, treat yourself. Because, when it amazed Briggs, when he finds one the size of that scat, and the fact that whatever it was, whatever made it, obviously was eating something on a regular basis.
Could you imagine the size of whatever made that scat?
Exactly. 4 foot by the size of a coffee can. That's insane.
Well, grizzly bears don't normally have that type of scat, but the diameter will go 4 inches. And possibly 5 in the giant bears, but that's about it. So if it's not a grizzly.
Yeah, but he said it was a very human-like, generally bears. I don't know that much about grizzly scat because I haven't studied grizzly. But isn't their scat pretty much a plop too? Just kind of a plop?
Kind of like a black bear then, right?
Amorphous usually, yeah.
Amorphous,
the typical Sasquatch scat is human-like or in a rope-type coil, but also, they could get into some bad stuff and have bad reactions like we do.
I suppose. Well, this was interesting because this scat was found along with an elk mortality study, they were radio collaring young elk. And the collars kept going dead, and they would find these elk, of course, with the liver missing, the entrails missing, and they would often find these big scats near the corpse where they were recovering their collars. Super interesting.
That brings up another point, too. We know that gorillas will eat their scat.
They'll eat them.
How about these guys?
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a little bit of an idea.
So do gorillas do that on a pretty regular basis?
I believe so.
They're kind of recyclers. That's right.
I can't speak for every individual gorilla, and that could be Googled and checked with the gorilla specialists, but it certainly has been noted, and significantly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting. One of the new things that we're studying, we're going to be studying all summer, is the skin oil that they seem to leave when they touch things, kind of a whitish, thicker sebum, surface skin lipids.
Sure. And
it's really 3D evidence. And I'm sure you've seen photos of Bigfoot fingerprints on windows, Dan, through the years. And everybody always thought they were dusty fingerprints. But we're thinking that in most cases that's not dust, or it's a sticky sebum that's collected some dust. Mm-hmm. But in the sebum one, there's 3D evidence because you've got the latent details, then you've got the sloughed off skin cells that should be in the sebum, and then of course you've got the chemical compounds because gorillas have a very different sebum than we do. There's different amounts of triglycerides and cholesterols and all these different chemicals that are in our sebum. So every primate has a different amount of sebum or different amount of chemicals. But we've had great luck in getting them to touch things. Maybe you can't get a photo, but they don't seem to mind touching things.
That's another key. And now you're getting into the forensics and all kinds of other possibilities that we've got that continue to mount. So another fingerprint from them. Mm-hmm. I saw when that first came up when you were talking about that. So yeah, I'm very interested.
So Dan, what's your theory on how they're able to hide so effectively from us and other things, really? Well, almost go invisible.
Yeah. There's a great report out of Iowa with a turkey hunter who's by a blind, and he's basically peeking over the blind, or else he's wearing a cover. And this individual comes walking down through the valley, and he's got a good look on him, and the sun's on him, and it apparently stares right at him, and then it changes somehow, and it's like something to do with the hair, and I don't know or have the details in front of me regarding what the specs were, but their ability to freeze and literally blend in are pretty historically amazing. And so a lot of people get very, very close to them before they even see them. Mm-hmm. And I think in a lot of cases, they're a lot closer than what people would guess. I know one fellow that I worked with over in the Cumberland area, and we did that Cumberland Monster gig or production, Doug. And one of the Native American fellas walked outside the house and walked right into a big male who grunted and literally just stood there. Yeah. And it makes you wonder how often, how close are they in that ravine just underneath or 3 trees over, just watching you. And
you know the most amazing thing from Cumberland? Yeah. It seemed like the whole town turned out to give us their reports. And I'm thinking, okay, this guy, he wouldn't have one. He was the postman. We actually saw the postman delivering mail out in this rural area. And he goes, oh yeah, I've had experiences too with him. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Just insane how many people don't talk.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. We're all being judged. And what I enjoyed with you talking with Jay was the fact that one incident, one person could be the cause to open up another person's ability to communicate or share information.
Right.
Or that might be the incident that takes the person over the edge where, okay, I'll accept this and take it serious and put some time in it.
Yeah.
You know?
Have you heard the theory? Oh, by the way, somebody made a really cool comment about walnuts.
Yeah.
It's already good. Can you put that up, Alex? I think it was Brian Corbin.
Let's see here. Let me find them.
Talking about
green and black walnuts hulls. Yeah, I see the question.
Oh, here we go. Right here.
Yep. So I'm going to do a little research on that. And there's definitely a lot of walnut farms out west. Tons of them. So that could be something they're utilizing.
I think if we spend more time with these edible plants and the medicinal capabilities that plants have, I wouldn't be surprised if we start noticing that they're utilized.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's been numerous reports of Bigfoots being seen in walnut groves.
Sure.
In fact, there was one I listened to this year of a couple of guys that were hired as security guards to guard the walnut grove because somebody was raiding this grove so bad, and they ended up doing a whole chase, literally a chase of this Bigfoot all around this walnut grove, and it was a fascinating story, really interesting. So there you go, Brian. That kind of backs up what you might be saying there. We just don't know.
Seeds as well. There's something to look into also,
Sure.
Doug. It's pumpkin
you
seeds.
just brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Are they anti-parasitic, Joel?
Oh, that's just Eden had just put that in there. That pumpkin seeds are a natural warmer. So something to take a look at as well.
They're also delicious.
They are.
And tree bark was brought up. Of course, birch is like aspirin. So, and I'm sure that tree bark is certainly on the, that's something to chew. It's got some things in it. Yeah. And you're working with the bark, you're going to pick up more protein with all the larvae and things in the tree. So, yeah. And soils have minerals in them. So there might be some chew there.
That's true. Yeah.
Certainly wood with trees, certain types.
Anthills would probably be a delicacy.
There's been an association of anthills and sticks, possibly by juveniles. And I'm going to bring up Stan Courtney again, because one of his first experiences, I believe he said, was out west. And I know he had spent some time on the New Mexico-Colorado border. And one of the things I remember reading from one of his reports was it seemed as though maybe a juvenile was bored or something, and there was a lot of stick play. And of course, that continues to come up today associated with tracks, and maybe some tricks, some sticks were manipulated, or little rock piles and things like that. So obviously they're potentially messing with different parts of the environment. Then you start wondering about signs. I've got a buddy of mine who's up in central Wisconsin, and he made a bench for his mom. Big heavy metal one. Good size. I don't know. It was under 100 pounds, so I guess it wasn't all that heavy. He found that stuck up a tree 7 feet in the air. Okay, well, that alone, teenagers could do that. But it was out in the middle of nowhere, literally, and very difficult to even get four-wheelers back in there because of all the brush and the density of the forest. He had his dog along one time, and they found rock stacks along a particular path. The dog didn't want anything to do with the rock stacks. Interestingly enough, a year later, he comes by again. He found 3 Sasquatch tracks there. So there's a couple interesting things. I'd mentioned Stan had an interesting report that probably a lot of people would discard, but he had gotten information from a fellow over toward Murfreesboro, Illinois, and that was that the claim was that there was a Sasquatch riding a train. And sure, you bet, right. And he converged over with this fellow, and he said, now, what I'm seeing is it appears as though it's getting in between the boxes, so it's in the connection area. And he said, I'll watch the left, you watch the right. And the train went by, and by golly, if there wasn't a great big massive pile of hair in between the two boxcars of this train, and the speed was going about 25 miles an hour.
That's an efficient way to travel.
Think about that.
Yeah. What if they're what if they're catching the train while it's moving, hopping on and catching a ride? I mean, why not?
Yeah.
There's a lot of reports of them riding on the sidewalls of vans or trucks or things like that. In Iowa, a fella coming out to the field, got a day in the field, got to throw fertilizer around, goes over to his truck, big black thing jumps out of the back of his truck and heads for the cornfield. Wow. So I think we're surrounded and watched on a regular basis. Stan thinks that there's a tremendous number of them on the edges of towns and cities.
Oh, sure. I mean, think about that.
There's wildlife corridors that go right literally into the town. And a good example of that is our cougar, bobcat, lynx specialist, Dr. Anderson over at UW Stevens Point, who works with the Wisconsin DNR as a consultant on some of the reports. He did his PhD in Albuquerque or New Mexico, but one of his favorite animals that he had radio collared was a big tom cougar, and every several weeks after bar time, it would come down Main Street of Albuquerque and literally hunt. So dogs, cats, whatever. And it would do this routinely throughout the year. So makes you think twice about how animals are utilizing space and watching our behavior when we go to sleep or when we're up.
Yeah. Well, every other animal uses the peripherals of town to get food, whether it's through garbage or animals or what have you, so it makes sense that they would too.
Well, it's the edges of forests that literally hold 90% of the wildlife.
Oh, yeah.
In a certain area.
And Bill just mentioned frog eggs. That's a good one. Frog eggs, fish eggs, we eat them. We're also looking at alligator eggs and turtle eggs. I mentioned that earlier before. And the concentration of turtle eggs are going to bring in more protein, raccoons, etc. And raccoon is another example of a universal species that's everywhere in high abundance, especially now with the lack of fur trade. And so I don't see anything holding them back as far as population growth.
No.
Do you?
I mean, really, it's going to be food, and it's going to be the biggest thing that holds any animal back is food sources.
Yeah.
I have to make a comment. Our audience in this chat room are a lot of really super intelligent comments and people.
Oh, definitely. I've been reading them, and it's been very smart.
Yeah, it's like normally you go into chat rooms and they're all just kind of goofing around. Dang, we got some serious people in here.
Yeah.
These guys, they all mean business.
They bring a lot to the table.
It's nice to see. So thank you, everybody.
And I'll plan to interact with them after the show, too. I'll be looking forward to networking and talking to people. So that'll be fun.
Okay, I want to talk about their hair. Let's see, we've got 15 minutes left. We're okay. But their hair, as you know, Dan, has got no medulla, very transparent. So even if you see a black Bigfoot, the hairs look really clear and almost blonde-like, Is it possible that transparent medulla or the hollow tube is helping them camouflage? That idea has been kicked around a lot now.
Sure seems like it.
Reflecting light. They're in green. They're surrounded by green, and so it's gonna, in a certain lighting conditions, it's going to help them pick up the green hue on their fur and just kind of make it so you can't see them very well.
It's that's not something that I'm real familiar with, but I've read different accounts, and it seems to be a pattern of consistency there.
Yeah.
So I would expect,
Yeah, their hair is really different. It's thinner, little diameter. It's hollow, and they seem, consistently, the ones that I vet seem very wispy, very similar. They have a tapered end, no medulla, very slight wave to them. And we're planning a lot of really cool forensic tests, with different lightings and and all sorts of things. And of course, it's one of the reasons you can't get DNA very well, because that's where all the DNA is in the center of the hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not in the ectoskeleton of the hair of the shaft. It's in the medulla. So super interesting.
Well, it's amazing how many of the samples continue to come back human contaminated, isn't it?
Yeah. Human.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a. I was in that America on Earth show with Scott Wolter, and he thought he had a real got me because he meets me to give me the DNA results of one of the Paul Freeman hairs, and I sacrificed one hair, and of course came back human.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, obviously they didn't get the whole DNA sequence. They just had a small part of it, and I hoped it would come back human. But he kind of felt like, oh, gee, Doug, sorry to disappoint. And I'm like, yeah, I knew damn well it was going to come back human. So there you go. So if anybody's got any cool questions, get them in the chat. Get them in now. It's a lot of really cool statements. So I actually learned things from our chat tonight. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
And so what is your favorite, or I shouldn't say favorite, one of the weirdest Bigfoot stories you've ever heard, Dan? Do you have one?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I spent a lot of time with Harriet McFeely over in Nebraska because I'm trying to learn more about the use of the plains habitat without as they transcend from point A to point B, mountains or whatever. And I ran into an old fire chief over there a couple of times, a couple of years. And so he told me repeat stories, and I just wanted to compare them. Amazing, right down the line. So I think there's a good chance that he's pretty accurate with what he has to say. First thing was that when he was 18, he saw a tall figure, and he was trying to get a shot at it with a friend of his, again, 18 years old. And this thing was between 7 and 9 feet tall, so around 8 feet, and it was running incredibly fast. He never did get a good shot at it, thankfully. Up the on the north side of that county, and I forget which one it was, but it was over west, and there's a lot of reports along the Platte River, by the way. He had a contact who decided to work for a big ranch, and this fella basically had the whole ranch to himself. He was like the only guy there. Problem was, when he got there, he noticed that one of the doors got shut. I mean, it's like right there, and all of a sudden, pow, the door's shut. He's like, what in the world? So he goes over there and looks, and by the time he gets there to open the door is shutting on the other side of the barn. That's toward trees and soils, and there's cover there. So he's thinking, okay, I'm going to enter the other side. And so apparently down the road, the door had activity again. So we went to the other side of the building, big barn or whatever, and opened up, and here's this large Sasquatch. Reaches out and grabs him, picks him up in the air, looks at him, and sets him down and walks off.
Jeez.
Wow.
He did not stay at that job long. He left that day.
I would imagine.
Now another interesting one that he had a friend from Nevada, and this fellow said that we'd bought a property. And now this guy is, in his 70s, and these are like 2 or 3 events he had in his whole lifetime. So it's not like something's happening every day. This fellow told him that he and his wife had got this new property. There was a path in the back of the house, and it was like, who made this path? There isn't supposed to be anybody around here. And so they walked the path, and they're like over a half of, I see that, Randy. I'll jump to that. They go like a mile. They come through this rock pass, and here's this Sasquatch, apparently with a wounded leg, sitting on the ledge. And they freak. They head back to the house. Next thing you know, the wife is putting groceries together. And the husband's like, "What are you doing?" And she said, I'm taking him some stuff. And she did. And she took it and set it on the ledge, and he was gone at that point. Eventually, over time, this thing started coming closer to the house. And eventually, they were like, it'd be just like there. And they would interact somewhat. The only thing that came that the focus was that they were like throwing rocks, and when this guy would pick up rocks and throw, and then this thing would pick up rocks and throw. So there was some mimic behavior going on there. This is also the fellow that told me about a deer carcass in a man's house. 2 deer carcasses. One of them was partially eaten. So it could be some house use, vacant house.
Super interesting. Okay, so what's this juvenile that you witnessed?
It was really interesting because I just got through teaching at the university, one of our local universities in southwest Wisconsin here. And I remember by the time I got the animals put away, it was pushing 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had to go, and I was invited to the field station down in southern Missouri in the Ozarks. And it took me 12 hours to get there. So I come rolling in about 2:30 and meet a local policeman, and we get talking. And then Shane comes up and picks me up, and then I meet Randy, and Chris is elected to sleep in the tent actually, and so I'm like, they're like, well, you just drove 12 hours, you obviously need some sleep, and I'm like, are you kidding me? It's golden hour, let's do it. So we took the thermals and we just walked down the path for like half an hour or whatever it was, and all of a sudden Randy had noticed some head bobbing in the distance, and it looked as though this could be what we're looking for. And of course, with the detail not being exactly what we'd like to have, there were questions, but Shane felt really comfortable that this was it. So he's like, all right, guys, I'm going in. And there was a little bit of concern about, well, if you do this, how is this going to affect future interactions? And this is like, I'm going in. All right. So he kind of gets help guided and heads over toward this individual. And the individual is lying in the grass, peeking through the grass at him. And I don't recall exactly the size, but I think with 10-inch prints, we're talking pushing 6 feet and maybe 200 pounds. And Shane spent some time not within 7 to 8 feet of this individual and shine a light on it. And we're kind of like, geez, don't overdo this. And on the second walk back to the individual, a rock was thrown, and that would either be a sibling or a possibly mother. But there wasn't any tooth clacking, and there wasn't seemed to be any major stress. So eventually Shane walked back, and we were all doing high fives and wondering how this is going to go. Well, it turns out that night they came into camp after we fell asleep. Yeah, the audio's picked that up. And then the next night we went up the hill looking for the big male. And in the meantime, while we were up there, apparently they came into camp again. But Randy had all kinds of things lined up on the table, all supply materials. And from the first night, all that had happened was one of the wipes, clean wipes, pulled out of the container and laid on the table, and it had a smudge mark on it. So we were very suspicious. If you've got raccoons, as Randy mentioned later, you'd think that you're going to get all kinds of destruction and things tipped over and knocked over, and they're going to get into everything. Everything was just clean as a whistle. And the next night, after listening to the audio, every item had a particular sound to it. And it got especially interesting when it got to the big bag with a zipper. And that zipper was open and shut 18 times. You could hear the zipper go back and forth. Toward the end of this, the cooler was opened. And appropriately, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but as I remember it, there were 6 monster cappuccinos taken appropriately out of the cooler. And as far as I know, Shane's never seen where those cans were taken. So, and we have gotten a handprint from the property and numerous footprints and certainly vocalizations and more. You'll have to tune into the 400 and check with Beast TV. I think that's where they're updating their research, and hopefully I'll be back down there working with them in the very near future.
So tell me about the handprint that you found.
I can't. I can only tell you, except that it was taken from a ledge area, roadside.
Okay.
When you go up the hill, and it was up underneath the ledge, as far as I remember. And if I'm wrong, let me know. And Rodney's asking, what's my thoughts on capturing a Sasquatch for study? Ideally, we'd be able to do something where we wouldn't have to take it into a capture, but we could operate with it in the field. That's my personal.
Yeah. Don't you think that's the best way as some type of a tranquilizer drug?
Yeah. If you
radio collar
tranquilizer, you've got a problem because you don't know metabolic rate, and you don't know if you're going to be able to hit it with enough stuff to knock it down. And plus, you don't know exactly. I mean, look at the underestimated weights of these things. Oh, it was 7 feet tall and had to weigh 300 pounds. Well, shit. I'm 6 or I'm 5'7" and weigh 250. Okay. Yeah. So if I was 7 feet tall, NFL lineman, anybody? But anyway, swimming, Clint, yes. Marine, constantly. And seeing out to 20 miles off coast. Now, do all people swim well? No. Do all people talk 3 languages well? No. Some of us do. What are their extremes? What are their averages? What are their minimals? Who knows?
Yeah. So true. So true.
We have a lot left to learn. Oh, yeah. By the way, if you guys like what you're hearing here and you've enjoyed the show, make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, by the way.
And leave a comment in the actual, not in the chat, but actually in the comments, because that's actually how we're rated by YouTube, is based on the comments. So if there's no comments and a lot of subscribers, we'll still be low on the totem.
Yep.
Plus,
smash that like button and subscribe.
Yeah, leave a comment. Tell us who else you'd like to have on the show.
Yeah.
Let us know how we're doing.
It doesn't have to be Bigfoot. This is Untold Radio. We've done UFOs. We've done, you name it. We've done it, right, Doug? We've talked about it. So,
even sky plankton.
That's right. So it just doesn't have to be Bigfoot. We do love talking Bigfoot. Don't get me wrong, because that's what we're doing tonight. But we've gone everywhere else too. We'll talk about anything you guys want us to talk about. That's strange and unusual.
So, Dan, tell people where they can find you on Facebook. But what's the best way?
Real quick, Dana Nedrelo, Nedrelo. That's my cryptozoology handle. My more professional one is Dan A. Nedrelo. Hence, that's where Dana came from. And I'd also like to mention that I've got a couple of groups that I've been putting together. One being wildlife literature, another being art and data, Sasquatch witnesses, and another one called the White Biped Project. And these are private invite groups only, so we don't have to worry about having to manage the craziness that some people like to execute.
Sure. Well, Dan, it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you. This 2 hours is just flown right by, Doug.
This is probably one of the quickest shows I remember. Dan, you're amazing. So we got to have you back. Oh, here's a proposal, Dan. If you have any really cool stories you want to tell, we'd love to have you on even in the beginning of our show, just to relay a cool sighting that's going on.
I'll put some together because there's a boatload.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. I want to thank everyone that tuned in to listen, that did it live, people that are listening to the podcast, people that are watching the video later. Alex Highcheck, want to thank you again for producing. Doug, thanks, like Alex. Always, awesome working with you.
Alex, thanks for helping me on the technical aspects.
He is the ace. Without him, we wouldn't be on the air. So all the thank goes to Alex. He really does a great job every week.
That was one of the fastest hour and so many minutes I've ever done. Thank you.
Yeah, right? Until next time, guys, take care of each other and love each other and keep looking for Bigfoot.
And Doug, I gotta interview you at some point, if that's okay.
Yeah, we'd love to talk.
All right.
See ya.